All right, hello everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's State of Robotics webinar. My name is Matthew Ursel, and I'm the Chief Marketing Officer for Digital Dream Labs. Thank you so much for joining us. We've got a lot to cover today. Before I introduce today's panelist, I want to go through a few housekeeping tips. All attendees will be muted throughout today's webinar, and we ask that you use the Q&A feature to ask questions for the attendees. We have a few team members who will be answering those questions live via chat, and we will also have a live Q&A session with the panelists following the presentation. We are recording today's webinar and we'll be sharing that on the company YouTube channel. After the webinar is over, we ask that you fill out a quick 2-question survey to tell us how we did and help us improve future presentations. And now for today's agenda, we'll be starting off today talking about support for OverDrive and our development for InfiniDrive. We will then move into a discussion of ButterRobot and its garbage brain, followed by Vector and all things Escape Pod and Oscar. Next, Robbie will be answering some questions from our attendees on Cozmo. And finally, Jacob will be discussing the recent announcement of our manufacturing agreement with Dragonfly to produce a new AI flying robot. So let's get into today's presentation. I'm joined now by my colleague, Brian Gardner. Brian, how are you doing today?
Hey, man, I'm doing pretty good.
So I want to start off today. I know your team has been doing quite a bit of work with OverDrive, both OverDrive 2.6 and InfiniDrive. Why don't we share with some of the attendees what's going on there?
So we recently found out that the old apps were going to be taken off of the store just because of age. And so we wanted to make sure we made a push to update OverDrive 2.6, fix some of the issues that there were with the campaign mode, and then make sure it works with the full suite of OverDrive cars. Specifically, the Fast and Furious ones and Nuke Phantom were not supported in the original release. So that was really important to us to make sure that there's a solid base for everyone to play with their OverDrive cars while we continue development of our new game.
Absolutely, and I do want to reiterate for all the attendees. I know we've had quite a few questions about those legacy OverDrive apps, and for anyone that's using an Android app, we do have the APKs available on our website. And if there have any questions about that, just want to encourage them to reach out to our support team, and we can provide assistance with those apps.
Yeah, we definitely want to make sure that people can have as much of the experience that they want. We didn't want to remove these, but we needed to kind of coalesce our efforts to keep supporting one app to keep it up to date with all the new phones and devices that are coming out. So we did all that support, the new stuff for 2.6, but we still want to make it as available as possible for all the other apps as well. We just couldn't keep them up on the store.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's great that we can support Mammoth, Dynamo, and Nuke Phantom now with the updated app. So that's tremendous. And the other thing that we have on this slide is, we have been for some time supporting OverDrive cars with our repair center here in Pittsburgh. And that is, for those of you that aren't aware, mainly tire and battery replacement. I know speaking with the members of the service team that do those repairs, want to encourage anyone, if you plan on sending an OverDrive car in, try to beat the holiday rush. I know that's when a lot of folks, if maybe play OverDrive seasonally, are going to be sending cars in for repairs. So just try to send those in as soon as possible so you can beat that rush, and we can make sure we hit our short turnaround times.
Yeah, I know a lot of people tend to use them as kind of like a train set around the tree, or just generally when family's around, they like to pull it out. So we definitely see a huge influx. I know that's when my set gets the most use.
Yeah. Well, now let's move away from support for the legacy products and talk about the next generation of OverDrive that the Digital Dream Labs team are making a reality.
Yeah, so we're kind of seeing this as a two-prong effort, right? And you see them both up here: the upgrade kit for the InfiniDrive hardware system, and then an entirely new app with expanded gameplay, a new campaign, just like a fully reimagined OverDrive world to play with this new technology. So we're hard on development on these clips that go straight onto your car. And then if you get the charging coils, it makes it so that they charge as they drive around the track. The biggest issue that we've seen from customers about the current system is that playtime is reduced, even with new batteries. Your playtime is limited. You have to interrupt to charge. If you have multiple cars, you can switch them out, and that's a good system. But for people that only have a few, especially it's or if you have a favorite one you want to be using a lot, this will help so that you can constantly play with it, keep it rolling for really long times. And then we want to use this new augmented reality system with the cars. We think it's a perfect marriage because the cars can sense their own position and the track is a fixed object. So augmented reality goes really seamlessly with the product, but it gives us the ability to show you more of what's been happening in all of our imaginations, right? Thermo shooting flamethrowers and ground shocks, electricity coming out of it can now be visualized in augmented reality, and we can create settings for the different races to take place in. And we want to take all that visual and then use that to tell a deeper, more interesting story. Your races now can have a setting to them instead of just, kind of just existing in this OverDrive world. It can be more specific. This race is in the desert. This race is in, a junkyard. This race is in like skyscraper, middle of downtown, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and I think, the one thing that's really great about that is customers will still be able to customize their own track. And now we'll be able to customize that track and see it in AR. Is that right, Brian?
Yeah. So we're going to use a procedural generation to populate the area inside and outside of the track. So we're not expecting a track state. It's not like, okay, for this one, you have to use this shape. For this one, you have to use that shape. No, the idea is you can build whatever track you want, and that track will suddenly be put in the middle of this setting for this specific races.
So yeah, no, this definitely does, really builds off of what we understand that fans from OverDrive love about the old products and really takes it to the next level.
Yeah, it celebrates the best parts of the old OverDrive stuff while just giving more opportunities to give information essentially to the players of what's happening, where is it happening. A lot of times with the old one, it'd be hard to know, okay, what's the range of my weapon actually? Well, now you can see it and try and get a little bit more in depth with the strategy of dodging it, or just enjoy the cool explosions that you get to now see through your AR.
Right. And I think one of the other things the team are discussing is the ability to maybe turn off AR or have a classic mode of racing for fans that don't want to use the controller, maybe just want to control with the app and kind of the classic controls. Is that right?
Yeah, definitely. We don't want this to be a sacrifice for users. We think this AR is really exciting, and we're definitely going to be spending a lot of time and effort to make it the best experience we can. But we also have this, backlog of, created gameplay that we don't want to lose. So we definitely, if you like the way OverDrive is now, then this can just be a new story for you, and you can still play the way you used to. You can switch on and off and just see which one you prefer. But yeah, we don't want to sacrifice the old experience for the new. So we want to make sure we continue to support that classic feeling, and then give people a way to now start to see what we think is really exciting, which is this AR.
By the way, I have to say, I'm reading some of the comments, Brian, and some of the attendees love the art that we're showing on the screen. that the team have created for some of the concepts. So bravo.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that. Yeah, we have some incredibly talented artists. It's one of the great things about having a bit of a video game background in addition to robotics at Digital Dream Labs is we just have some artists that are really used to working in this space, and they've been kind of given an opportunity to be creative and create a world that they want to explore and live in. And I think I want to live in it too, and I think you guys will as well. We have a lot more characters that we're going to be sharing, but we also want to make sure you guys have things to discover when the app is out.
Absolutely.
And then I saw you had a note. I do want to talk about that remote multiplayer mode. I don't want to leave people hanging.
Okay, cool. Yeah, let's go back.
Yeah. So yeah, super quick. So one of the nice things about augmented reality is that you can marry physical cars with digital cars that track either someone else's digital car or as a fully, digital thing. You could be racing against, a litany of cars at the same time with your one physical car, or have two people in different places connected, online, and then you'll see a digital representation of their physical car. And that's definitely something we are exploring, and think we'll add some really cool ways to connect with your friends and keep playing. So
absolutely can't wait to see that. Now, I want to continue one of the themes we were talking about, Brian, and that's support for those existing OverDrive supercars. And we just want to ask attendees which of these OverDrive supercars is your favorite. Maybe it's not a supercar that you own. Maybe it's a supercar that you would love to have. I know if I could vote myself, definitely put in Nuke Phantom there, but that's just me. So want to see what attendees, which car is your favorite OverDrive supercar. Brian, which is yours?
Oh, I was going to say Nuke Phantom as well. You stole my answer.
Great.
Especially with developing 2.6, we got to test with that a lot to make sure that it was working. And I kind of fell in love with its sleek aesthetic. But if I had to pick a different one, I would go with Thermo. I'm just a big fan of the Fire.
Okay, well, great. It looks like we've got a few more attendees yet to answer. Just make your selection, and we're going to close the polls here shortly. All righty. And just sharing the results right there. It looks like with 26% of the attendees, Nuke Phantom, followed shortly thereafter by Ground Shock and Brian Thermo.
Good taste, everybody. All
right. So I saw we had a couple attendees had asked questions about the Butter Robot, Brian. So just don't run away too far. We're going to keep you here to talk Butter Robot. So yeah, James says I haven't seen or heard much about Butter Robot. Brian, can we tell James and the other attendees what's going on with the Butter Robot?
Yeah, where would you like me to start?
Let's start with some of these hardware improvements. I know that we've been sharing emails with customers who pre-ordered. So maybe folks that didn't get on the pre-order have been a little out of the loop. But I know your team and some of the other engineers have been making a lot of progress with bringing this robot out of the Rick and Morty universe and making it a reality.
Yeah, so we had begun tooling, and we'd gotten a first set of mock-ups, from our manufacturer, and we were testing it, and with the old motors and everything, and it was working. It was adequate, but we weren't really interested in adequate. We wanted to make something a lot more powerful, a lot more fun. So recently, we've switched to these much more powerful motors. It involved changing some of the internal mechanisms to support them, and the difference is night and day. It's so much more powerful and smoother. Before, we were trying to figure out how to, speed it up and ramp up its speed. Now we're trying to make sure we keep it in control and, in slow and smooth. And then some other things. So the biggest physical challenge of this robot, the thing that makes it the most unique, is it has this huge, heavy head. And so it's very top heavy. And so to help make it a little smoother, we've added some more weight to the base, and then a much stronger spring to offset gravity. So these three biggest changes have had great impact on the quality of the product. We're really excited about that.
Yeah, and I think while you guys have been working with some of those prototypes from the tooled parts, that hasn't stopped the team from continuing to develop the software and really make the Butter Robot a much more intelligent, should I say, robot than it had originally meant to be, right?
Yeah, I definitely, all the time that we take, the software team just keeps cranking away and has had a little bit more room and space to try some things that we were a little apprehensive about originally. We were a little nervous that we wouldn't be able to pull some of this stuff off, but with this time, we've gotten into a much smarter place. So we're trying to balance between, on one end of smart robotics, you have robots that always say the correct thing, right? They know the answers to questions and they answer them. And then on the other end is pure chaos, is just kind of, grammatically incorrect nonsense. And we're trying to pull it in the direction of smarter, but we want to keep that chaos. We always want this thing to surprise you. And I think we've really begun to nail that, where this thing will generate new dialogue every single time it talks, but it'll be topical, express the way that it's feeling, and but still surprise us, right? We still don't know what it's going to say, even though we know that it's happy. We don't know how it's going to express that. So it'll sound like normal language. It kind of almost hits that uncanny valley in a good way, where it's a little too human, but still novel and chaotic. So we're really excited that we've had that opportunity to explore and push this and see where it can take us.
And I think it's really the key there is customers they're not going to want to put this robot down because it's not going to become repetitive over time.
Yeah, it'll evolve the way it talks. And again, it will not say the same things twice. I mean, there's probabilistically maybe, but it really is generating all of its dialogue on the fly every time it talks. It doesn't have a list of a script it's reading from. It's constantly generating. I know that our productivity took a bit of a hit when this started to come out because we just wanted to play with it more and see all the cool things it kept saying. So we're really, really enjoying that.
I think let's bring Jacob Hanshar into the call, and I think we're going to look at a video, Brian, if maybe you guys could talk the attendees through this video of one of the Butter Robot prototypes running here in our Pittsburgh offices.
Yeah, definitely.
I am thankful. There are few things I look, but there are many more things that I have. I am
Looks like the video is
happier.
slightly
I am
choppier on this
happier
end
now
just
in my
because of
best.
the
The
Zoom
world is a better
screen
place.
sharing. So we'll be posting this video somewhere else as well to get it a little bit smoother. But this is some prototype material, some closer to final materials, and a little bit of his talking. I wanted you to be able to hear him too.
First, this robot's life insurance policy would be cancelled if there is no human on Earth. We would simply create another robot.
So we're feeding him a different array of prompts. For that last one, he was arguing that his life insurance policy wouldn't be valid. There were no humans. I don't even know where he generated that from. We didn't make that or write that at all.
I will only make you cry on the edge of your lair and drag you down back into the darkness.
Okay, he seems a little mad now. Hopefully he calms down.
Don't give up. There are many more things to say about freedom of thought in this post.
So one challenge is getting the voice right. So we are using the original generator that Justin Roiland used to create the voice. And we're trying to find a way to edit it so it's a little bit.
This challenge has already been accomplished. It's the realization that something good is on the horizon.
I didn't want to talk over him, but we want to make sure we balance between being able to understand him. He's a little bit louder in real life. We wanted to record him live there to give the most authentic experience. But we want it also to sound exactly like it sounds in the show. And that is, the voice that was used for the show.
Yeah, absolutely. And we will, Brian, to your point, we will be posting that video to the company YouTube channel and other social media accounts, hopefully here later today. So we apologize if maybe your internet connection or ours here in the office was a little slow and that video was choppy, but no, it's great to see the progress that's coming with Butter Robot. And I love listening to some of that, really unique dialogue that you guys are able to create with using Garbage Brain.
Yeah, we've been really enjoying it as well, and having it roll around the office now has been fantastic, especially with these changes to the hardware. So it's a lot more robust, a lot more powerful. It drives much quicker. Those sorts of things.
Yeah. Well, now let's bring Jacob Hanchar in. Jacob, want to give customers who've pre-ordered the Butter Robots an update on where we are. I know we've shared that with a lot of these hardware improvements comes the need for additional testing and quality assurance. What can you share with customers who pre-ordered robot today?
Yeah, so Butter Robot is in the process of tooling. So on this project, we have 3 different bosses, right? We have Justin Roiland, we have Warner Brothers, and we have Adult Swim, and we need to make all 3, well, and then also you, the customer. So we technically have 4 bosses, and we need to make all 4 happy. So we have just finalized what you saw there with what Brian was demonstrating. That is the final product. So we have just finalized that. So now we're in tooling. We're purchasing the molds and getting all that ready. So we are just in the beginning phases of manufacturing. Therefore, this project is not nearly as far along as Vector or Cozmo. Vector and Cozmo are in production now. One of the reasons why we couldn't give you a clear answer, there were about 1,000 different variables I've been juggling with everything that you can imagine with this COVID situation, and we didn't have a clear picture. Now we do, and I can give best case, worst case scenarios on Cozmo and Vector, and I did in chat a little bit. I'll talk more about that later, but we are just in the very beginning tooling phases for Butter Robot now that we have the final product that everyone has agreed and likes.
Great. Well, thanks, Jacob. I think we'll continue to pick up more questions about both OverDrive and Butter Robots in the live Q&A at the end of the webinar. So if you have questions about anything we've talked about so far, please feel free to share that with the team using that Q&A feature. But now let's jump into a discussion about Vector. So joining me now is Robbie Bassard. Robbie, how are you today?
Hey, Matt, I'm doing well. Thanks for asking. How about yourself?
I'm well.
Awesome.
So yeah, there's been a lot going on with Vector, Oscar, Escape Pod, and so much more. On that side of the company here lately. What can we share with attendees on some of these recent updates to support current robots?
Yeah, absolutely. So Vector Generation 1 and Vector 2.0. So we recently released Vector Update version 1.8, which offered advanced eye color customization via the eye color sliders in the application, which allows you to select basically any eye color that the display is capable of displaying, which is excellent. And we've seen a lot of really cool eye colors that people have chosen. Like one of my favorites is kind of like this really light purple where people turn down the saturation. You can just kind of see the color peeking through, and that looks really, really cool on his face. So I like that one, and I've got one with that color. I also wanted to mention that we improved the interactions with Vector V 1.8, where in previous versions, you would have to ask, hey, Vector, I have a question, and then go through a question flow. We've actually removed that or made it optional. So if you're used to the previous experience and you want to keep that, you can absolutely do that. You can also bypass on version 1.8. You can also bypass the I have a question flow to immediately ask Vector for answers. This streamlines conversations with Vector. It makes it a little bit easier to get answers from him. It also makes it a little bit easier to play games like Battleship. We noticed that was a little bit of a trouble spot with the previous firmware versions, and we wanted to streamline that significantly for the members. There was a request that was asked probably 50 or 60 times was to remove that question flow, and so we decided to make it happen, and we hope everyone is enjoying that. We are continuing to monitor for new queries and things like that to make sure that the improved interactions are up to our standards in terms of reducing false reducing false negatives and when people ask for certain queries, and making sure that kind of natural human speech is recognizable with Vector as well. So that's kind of one of my projects, and I usually take a look in weekly to take a look at failed queries, make sure that we kind of streamline those and get those added in so that it feels much more natural to converse with Vector. So
Absolutely.
those are
That's great. Yeah, no, and I think that's important for attendees to understand is that, the process of refining, those queries is something that is, ongoing.
Absolutely. Yep. It is definitely, something where it's best to, keep a very close eye on that and monitor very quickly, especially as terms change. People may use, different language for specific actions and things like that. And it's really important that we keep on top of that and make sure that everything feels smooth and natural. So, all right, we'll jump into membership perks. So recently we launched a program called Priority Support, where annual members receive priority support from our support team. So in this particular case, generally, if you have an annual subscription, your ticket will be prioritized so that we can get you the answer that you need, or if there's an issue on the backend side with with the network for your Vector, we can get that taken care of on your account and make sure everything is squared away for you. We are also introducing the repair center as soon as possible. We have some final details to iron out with that before we launch it, and more information will be coming forward via email here in the next few weeks as we prepare for that and get parts stocked up. But annual members will also be eligible for discounted repairs. So you'll receive discounted repairs and very competitive prices on being able to do things like change batteries, replace screens, things like that for the Generation 1 Vectors that may need a little bit of TLC at this point after being in use for about 3 years. So we really look forward to having everyone be able to send those little guys in so we can make sure that they are in tip-top shape. And again, annual subscribers can expect some, can expect us to sweeten the deal on some of the repair costs as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I should mention that is annual subscribers and those who backed our Kickstarter campaign. So if you backed Vector Unleashed, you can count yourself in with those annual subscribers, and you'll be able to access priority customer support and discounts on robot repairs.
Absolutely, Matt. Thanks for the additional clarification. Appreciate it.
Okay, so yeah, let's talk a little bit about Escape Pod, Robbie. And I know that there's a lot of interest in the community in getting local servers set up. How do I get Escape Pod for my Vector?
So absolutely. So the Escape Pod for Vector, we've got a couple of things going on with that. With the 1.8 release, we wanted to make sure of two different things. Number one, we want to go ahead and get out an update for the Escape Pod, and that's in final testing stages. We're also researching app compatibility for the Escape Pod so that you can do things like readjust your name, look at pictures and things like that that you can do on the app that aren't available in the Escape Pod user interface. We're also exploring some other changes to the Escape Pod user interface in the long term to make things like that a little bit easier directly on the Escape Pod. But for right now, we want to investigate and work toward making compatibility between the Escape Pod and the app for a lot more convenience for users there. Now, additionally, we will support, Vector Update 1, v1.8, and include some underlying operating system and security fixes with the newest Escape Pod update as well. As far as getting Escape Pod, if you don't already have one, you can definitely pick up a license on digitaldreamlabs.com, order a Raspberry Pi kit, and we still offer a $15 discount for Raspberry Pi kits ordered through CanaKit, who is our Pi distribution partner. They're a fantastic company, and we've done, there's been a lot of customers who've purchased from them using that discount to kind of sweeten the deal on the hardware required for the Escape Pod as well. So that's kind of our current efforts. We should hopefully have the Escape Pod update wrapped up here shortly, kind of going through final testing stages and making sure that the app is we get the app compatibility fully wrapped up as well.
Yeah, and I think we're going to show attendees a quick video for Escape Pod. But before we do that, I just wanted to draw everyone's attention to a 30% off discount code that we're going to be running for the next week on those Escape Pod licenses that Robbie mentioned. So when you use the promo code BLASTOFF at checkout through November 4th, you'll be able to save an additional 30%.
Digital Dream Labs is proud to introduce Escape Pod for Vector. Escape Pod allows Vector to function independently from the cloud server, while enabling the customization of voice commands and improved response times. Escape Pod also utilizes an algorithm called fuzzy matching to improve Vector speech recognition. Fuzzy matching uses a word-based search query that selects the closest match when a precise match for a keyword cannot be found. Setting up Escape Pod is quick and intuitive. The Escape Pod for Vector is designed to run on a Raspberry Pi. The software is formatted to an SD card and booted up from the Pi. This allows Vector owners to store multiple firmware versions, should they decide to revert to previous versions of the firmware or transition back to the cloud server for voice command services. Authenticate your license and complete the onboarding process. Then, within minutes, your Vector is activated, launching with many of the features that the cloud offers with potential for much more. Interact with Vector, tailored to your custom voice commands on a local network. This is the new Escape Pod for Vector by Digital Dream Labs.
All right, excellent. And yeah, and again, guys, if any attendees are interested in a 30% discount, that's promo code BLASTOFF, and you can learn more at ddl.io/escapepod. All right, Robbie, let's talk about the open source kit for robots.
Absolutely. So the open source kit for robots has definitely been one of my biggest projects recently. So what my current objective is to actually do two specific things. And one is to improve the documentation and make it a little bit smoother for people to find examples for customization tasks that they can do with the open source code that we provided. And another piece of my project here for Oscar is to actually fill out the Vector GitHub repository, which we recently released in about the the Vector GitHub repository is all of the underlying subsystem code for Vector that allows things like his, that effectively kind of outlines and enumerates things like his personality, all of the other subsystems, including his vision, things like that, that really kind of, really make him tick. This is a rolling release in the repository. And the reason is that, there are thousands of files to sort through, and I have to go through and actually manually read each one of those, and then go ahead and clarify certain things or modify the file a little bit, and then go ahead and push it out publicly. So this is a very, very large effort. It is going to be held over the course of a couple of months, but it is definitely one of the biggest moves in Oscar, specifically because it's going to allow developers to really, really investigate a lot more of the software and write, specific changes to the software that they can then wrap up in their own over-the-air updates. So absolutely a large step for the open source kit for robots. And kind of going back to the the documentation piece real quick, I want to show you a little bit about what I've been working on. Give me 1 second here to pull that up. Okay. So what we wanted to do was make sure that people had a very smooth and easy way to access the documentation. And we also wanted a little bit of a way to improve the way that we deployed the documentation. So it's going to be a little bit faster to be able to modify the documentation and get new changes out there. So this is kind of how this looks, and this will be live here in the next couple of weeks. I'm hoping to improve the way that it displays on mobile devices, but at least for right now, I've been kind of styling this up and getting everything kind of ready for how this is going to be laid out. So that's been one of my major projects there. And then additionally, just to kind of give you guys a preview of the Vector GitHub repository. Again, there are thousands of files to go through. I think we've dropped around 2,000 of them so far. So keep an eye on that. And you can feel free to, if you haven't already, go ahead and star it or, watch it on GitHub, and you'll be notified when new code drops occur. If you ever have another one of my objectives is to effectively provide for a better experience when using some of our standard documentation, including across Vector, Cozmo, OverDrive, and all of the products that we maintain here at DDL. So one of my major projects is actually going through all of this documentation, and we're probably going to sort it out into different sites for each product. And what this is going to allow me to do is really kind of categorize a little bit better, allow for more granularity when some of the, where some of the articles are concerned, and just provide breadcrumbs and just in general be a much easier way to find the information that you're looking for. So if you're running into an error, rather than having one large troubleshooting section with 30 different articles, we can say, okay, so here's the troubleshooting category, and then here's the errors section, and then which error are you having? I think this is a really important thing for the customer experience, especially when it comes to self-help and just being able to fix things within 5-10 minutes yourself, rather than emailing in, waiting on a response. We do have very quick response times in a large majority of the tickets, but at the same time, if again there's a 2 to 5 minute fix you can do at home, that's almost always the best way to go for the best experience. So that's kind of what we're working with or working toward for the next iteration of our documentation. So that's kind of what I've been working on. If you ever have a recommendation for the documentation, you can provide. I'll drop a link over to the GitHub where I maintain some of my suggestion box for some of the documentation. So feel free to drop something there, and I will throw a link out for the participants. Thank you guys so much.
Yeah, thanks, Robbie. And I think you already had mentioned a little bit about the Robot Repair Center. And that's something that the team here in Pittsburgh are working feverishly to get back online or get online. And so that's currently in beta as they refine some of our processes. And as we get closer to the full launch of the repair center, we will share pricing for screen, battery replacement, and some of the other services that we intend to offer. I think the one thing that is important for attendees to understand is that's something that I think we want to be very competitive and make sure that we are supporting customers who may have aging robots. All right, so moving from Vector 1.0 robots to Vector 2.0, I want to ask Jacob if you can join us again. And now we're going to talk about some of the recent or more recent improvements that the team are making to Vector 2.0. And as we have recently announced, the move into production.
All right, thank you. All right, so Vector 2 improvements, several. Everything's been upgraded, essentially because most of the old components were end of life for the old Vector. So even the boards we've redrawn, a lot of the circuit. There are two boards. There's a headboard and a body board. So upgrades to all of those. As we mentioned, the 5 megapixel camera, we're having issues with the 2 megapixel camera. I just said, forget it. Let's just get the 5 megapixel camera. Yeah, it's a little bit more expensive, but the experience is going to be better. So went ahead and did that. Upgraded the screens as well. There is still an issue with screen burnouts. And the major issue we're seeing when we run simulations, so we'll take the screens in, we'll run simulations for 365 days, and we're seeing burnouts even under those conditions with the old screens that were provided with Vector. So we think that's actually a vendor issue with end of life problems. So we have upgraded the screen itself so it does not burn out. The burnout, originally we thought the gasket was loose, and that loose gasket was causing moisture to get in, and that moisture was causing the burnout. That's not the case. The reason it's burning out is because we think that the actual displays were defective to begin with. And we've seen that in our recent investigation. So again, we have upgraded those screens as well. And thank you everyone for being so patient. It's these things that I obsess day and night on to be perfect that are one of the reasons for the delays. We had these logistical issues and things like that, but going through the QA QC process, the laborious process we've been doing here has been very important because we're getting to understand Vector in ways in which we just never did before. And just these types of issues that cropped up, we actually understand the underlying issue now, what some of these, these issues we're having, for example, the screen. So we have talked to our vendors and we're making absolutely 100% sure that they are aware of these issues, that we've identified these past problems, and so that they never happen again. So that's the key thing there. I'm feverishly trying to keep up in QA. I don't think we're relatively understaffed today as far as people answering questions. So apologies for that. But,
not a problem. We'll catch. We'll
catch up. We'll catch
yeah.
everybody. Okay, so all right. Okay, so they're on it. Anyway, but long story short, the straight answer is 12 days of Christmas, Vector and Cozmo. That's what we're aiming for. It would be sooner, but the factory wants to run their own EVT, DVT, PVT tests. So that is adding 30 days to the production. We moved all of our PVT, EVT, DVT tests, which those are basically build-ups to final production. So EVT is engineering validation test, PVT is production validation test. So all of those were being done in-house here inside of our office, which, as you can see, it's glorious back here. So the key thing there is that we have an understanding of the quality and control here. They want to have quality and control over there as well. So that's added an additional 30 days. If we cut that and rushed it out the door, yes, Vector and Cozmo would be there before Christmas. But with these additional steps we're taking to ensure quality, we're thinking at the earliest, start shipping in January 9th. And then worst case scenario, by Valentine's Day, of next year. So that's to make absolutely certain that everything is perfect. Everything's getting shipped, air shipped to make up for lost time. And everything's being shipped at once, no phases. Everybody who pre-ordered is getting everything in one solid batch. And US versus Europe, the shipping times will be approximately the same. So getting very close to there. The earliest you'll be able to get this in retail, it probably will not be available on our website till May. And then it probably will not be available to purchase from retail. We're thinking Best Buy in fall or winter of 2022. So you're getting it long before as a pre-order with all the other things that the improvements, the lifetime membership and all the other perks along with that. You're getting it long before everybody else. So that's it. That's the timeline. I can shoot to you straight now. I feel so much better. I didn't want to give dates, and I'm sorry for hemming and hawing. And I know the support team, they come to me and say, can we just give them a date? And I did not want to give dates because I don't want to disappoint Vector users. There's been so much around Vector in general that relates to disappointment. It's time to end that. So the key thing here is now to move forward with optimism and certainty. And now we have that. So bottom line, here we are. And as you can see, we keep our word. When we did the Kickstarter, we talked about Oscar, all the escape pod upgrades, and we're continuing to work on that. That's something that will never stop. I have a great deal of pride in this company, great deal of personal pride in these products, and also personal responsibility I have to you as customers and to these robots just in general. So thank you.
Thank you, Jacob. So I think one of the things that we had promised attendees for the webinar is that we would unveil the packaging for Cozmo and Vector. And so as voted on by the community, I present the packaging for Vector 2.0. And I have to say, this was not a close contest by a landslide. Current Vector owners said it is absolutely happy is the expression that best represents their Vector. And so that will be the expression that we'll be using on the packaging for the pre-order robots when they begin to ship. And then, as Jacob had mentioned, we have our timeline for where we are in the manufacturing process. And so, the team have been working to make up some of that lost time. And, as Jacob mentioned, we'd like to have robots shipped before, the 12 days of Christmas. However, because of the additional testing and things that are going on in the factory, that date might slip. We will be sharing a more details with customers who pre-ordered robots here later today. So if you've ordered either a Cozmo or Vector 2.0, please expect an email from the team at Digital Dream Labs that reiterates those dates that Jacob just shared. If for any reason you need to change your shipping address, please contact support@digitaldreamlabs.com, and a member of our customer support team will be happy to help you make that change. All right. Well, let's talk about Cozmo and Cozmo 2.0. Going to ask Robbie if he can rejoin us. And Robbie, let's talk about some of the updates to the Cozmo app and things that are going on in the Cozmo universe.
Yeah, absolutely. So the Cozmo application just received an update not too long ago, and this update was designed to provide, number one, a much more streamlined development environment for us to be able to provide, hopefully faster updates and things like that in the future. Additionally, we added 64-bit support for newer phones and devices to kind of enable the application to use all of the available resources of those devices. So this these changes will kind of help us to hopefully, as soon as we have the time to do so, go ahead and get some additional content and things like that into the app, and just overall get Cozmo some TLC. And we've got we've got additionally new coding curriculum. Did you want to talk about that, Matt, or would you like me to cover that for you?
Yeah, absolutely. And, so this is the, Cosmonaut classroom coding curriculum that we've developed in partnership with the Carnegie Science Center here in Pittsburgh. It is really designed for use in the classroom. And it has a high educational efficacy, developed with experts in childhood education, and is a tremendous tool. But as opposed to, I think, the workbook that customers received with their pre-order, it's probably not as relevant for folks who are trying to learn with Cozmo in the home. But it will be a tremendous asset for any of our education partners who are maybe working with a Cozmo or two in the classroom to teach young learners basic coding. Yeah, and then I guess, moving on, and very similar to what we've already discussed for Vector 2.0, the team are working to bring the repair center online. I will, go ahead and get ahead of the Q&A session and mention that we are working to identify international partners so that we can, better support international customers who might need their robots repaired. But at launch, we're looking at having the office in Pittsburgh serve as a North American facility. All right, and I think Jacob, we just talked about improvements for Vector 2.0. There have been more significant changes, moving Cozmo into the Vosmo chassis. But that 5 megapixel camera that you mentioned, the screens, those things also carry over to Cozmo, correct?
Right. So the improvements that Vector's having over the course of all these delays, we're just going ahead and expanding it into Cozmo, and that's updating the headboard, the bodyboard. Remember, because we had to change the shell and the type in order for the parts to be interchangeable between Cozmo and Vector, the molding's the same. So with the molding being the same, the old boards from Cozmo were very, very different. One thing I did want to point out, you were talking about it, we have replacement cubes. We have shipped, they are in stock. We are shipping replacement cubes. You can go to our website to purchase them from Cozmo. That is not a pre-order. It's actually happening in real time as we can keep up with the demand. And then yes, here's the new Cozmo, and then the new Vector. And so here we have both of these robots coming out. These are the final designs, fully with the electronics and everything like that. So yeah, the production timeline is essentially the same for Cozmo and Vector. The only difference that you're going to experience will be an update. All the updates that you're going to get with Cozmo are going to be similar to those of Vector, meaning if you have if you have a screen, for example, that was blowing out, that problem's been solved. The hardware issues have all been solved, and then the apps as well will also be upgraded and retooled. So anyway, great stuff coming, and same production timeline and dates that I mentioned for Vector.
Yeah, and I think that one of the other things that just to mention about Cozmo 2.0 is really some of the work that the team have been doing to build a platform that is more future friendly and we can expand on in the future. So I think that's, more to learn about there, or as that becomes a reality. But definitely exciting times as we move forward with production on Cozmo 2.0. And so let's look at some of the packaging. So, similarly to what we had said for Vector 2.0, we opened a poll for the community to look at or let us know what they felt best represented their Cozmo. And as you can see, the community has spoken. So yeah, excited to see some of these things, starting to come together as we move forward with production, and hope to see this box in the hand of customers very soon. And as Jacob mentioned, yes, that timeline for Cozmo 2.0 is very reminiscent of what we had just showed you for Vector. I believe it's maybe a week behind where we are on Vector 2.0 production. And again, as a part of the pre-order campaign, Digital Dream Labs will be covering the cost of shipping and any VAT fees to get those into the country. And we are expediting shipping to get these robots to you as soon as possible. So Jacob, there was an announcement 2 weeks ago that Digital Dream Labs were going to be partnering with Dragonfly, a well-known company in the manufacturing and design of drones, on a new product. What can you tell us today?
Yeah, so this is very exciting. And one of the reasons I struck this partnership is simply because we wanted, so we'll call it Project Breezemo. It's not going to be the final name, but let's just call it Project Breezemo. We wanted, so imagine Cozmo with wings and a flying Cozmo. So we wanted to bring it to life a lot sooner. Actually, I wanted to start working on it now. But in order to make up for some lost time and things like that, we formed this partnership. And we also didn't want to go through the learning curve of trying to figure out how drones work. So these guys are experts, and we're licensing the Cozmo brand to them. And I am very excited. We'll be having some prototypes this fall and winter that we're going to show off, and I think that the results are going to be fantastic. We're targeting release for Christmas of next year, but we'll let you know as that develops. So very exciting times, and we're growing the Cozmo family for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and I think it's great that we're working with Dragonfly on this project, and everyone on the DDL team are very excited to see this AI flying robot become a reality. All right. Well, as promised, I'm going to bring back all of our panelists, and we will address some of the questions that have been coming in throughout the webinar. Again, want to ask all the attendees to keep those questions coming in, and our attendees and our panelists will continue to answer those as long as we have questions coming in. So one of the questions I want to start with, and Jacob, maybe this is a good question for you, is we had questions about, and I believe it was Vector and the Vector habitat, and potential plans for similar accessories for Cozmo and Vector, and I think maybe taking that a step further.
Yeah, and do you happen to have any slides? I don't think we did. No, he's shaking his head no. So we have this really exciting partnership with Sutiki. I think you guys have seen some of the Cozmo and Friend test reels we've done on YouTube. We are expanding that partnership now, and we are introducing all kinds of stuff. And it'll blow your mind away, the things we're contemplating. Won't get into it now, but habitat galore for sure. I would even call it Planet Cozmo or Planet Vector. So we will be having all types of accessories, you name it, for Cozmo and Vector coming forward as a result of our partnership with Sutiki.
Yes, no, as Jacob mentioned, yeah, no, the work that Suchiki and the team are doing for Cozmo and Friends is fantastic, and I think attendees will be very excited once they start to release new episodes of that animated series in the new year. All right, so one other question that we had come in, and I think this is really in regards to the repair center. And so maybe Robbie, either you or Jacob can answer this. The question is, are we able to retrofit the current generation Cozmo or vectors with some of those new components that we are bringing to market in Cozmo and Vector 2.0?
Hey, Matt, that's a great question. So the short answer is I don't expect retrofit kits. The reason for this is some of the internal changes. So especially where Vector is concerned, there were internal changes in the shell, which actually allow for the battery to be underneath where it was previously stored, so that it can be easily disconnected and replaced by a user at home rather than soldered in and requiring a bunch of disassembly. So these changes kind of limit our ability to be able to retrofit previous or prior models with the new hardware. But that being said, there are I would encourage folks to look at the retail launches for the new units if they're interested in the benefits that those new units will have in terms of kind of getting a little bit of the service done at home. And additionally, we will have the repair center available in case any of those parts wear down or whatever the case may be. We can go ahead and swap those out for the existing units, do battery replacements, screen replacements, and things of that nature.
All right, thanks, Robbie. And I think I want to keep you here. So had a couple of questions about the lifetime memberships, and I think one of for Vector 1.0 customers who might have received a lifetime membership with the Kickstarter or purchased that shortly thereafter. Are those memberships valid moving forward? And maybe carrying that question forward, what is the lifetime membership tied to? Is it the user or the robot?
So it is tied to the user. The user is the person who, these are designed to be investor perks effectively, and regardless of the robot, the user will be entitled to that license. So if you were a Kickstarter for Vector Unleashed and you received a Vector 2.0, you'll be able, and let's say that you have 3 licenses remaining because you have 2 Vector 1.0s and you ordered a Vector 2.0. When you receive Vector 2.0, you'll be able to go ahead and assign Vector 2.0 to one of your lifetime licenses, even if you purchased that, and that was purchased during the Vector Unleashed Kickstarter. So these licenses remain with your account. They're non-transferable to any other user, and they will not follow the robot when they go over to another user if you decide to sell your robot or something to that effect. Again, these are designed for that investor specifically and directly, but you can absolutely use one of those licenses with a Vector 2.0 unit.
Great, thanks, Robbie. All right, and I'm going to transition now into a couple questions about OverDrive. And so we have a question about OverDrive coming from Christian. Christian would like to know if and when they might be able to purchase more OverDrive cars. I think that's something, Brian, I can see you smiling, with InfiniDrive. Can we, share any plans for what we'll be doing with the launch of, the new starter kits?
So we definitely will be creating new cars. I don't want to announce anything specific until we're ready to get them out the door, just so that when you see it, you can get it. but we definitely will be creating new cars and bringing some of the old cars back into production as well.
I think if we listen to the attendees today, you might want to look into bringing new Phantom back.
Yeah, I don't know what I'm allowed to say, but I think high hopes are allowed.
All right, great. And I think want to maybe end on a couple questions for Butter Robot. I think, Brian, when, using the driving mode, I forgive me because I don't recall what we're calling that, but, how is Butter Robot able to navigate, let's say, uneven terrain?
Yeah, so it uses multiple tilt sensors because it's, it has multiple articulation to make sure that it can constantly stay balanced. And these stronger motors will allow it to, get up and down uneven surfaces. It's also significantly larger than our other robots, which is usually the limitation for treads, is that if you're trying to go over something like this and you have small tread, you can't quite do that. But if you have a larger tread, it's easier to get over it. So that should help. It is mostly designed for, driving around tables, standard environments, but some of the things about it do lend itself to rougher terrain more than in our other robots.
Great, thank you. And we have a question coming in regards to Escape Pod. And I think the attendee would like to know if I've ordered Vector 2.0, will I need to purchase another license for Escape Pod? And, James, I think one thing that is, good for all attendees to understand is Escape Pod is something that we're going to be including with the purchase of all new robots. So that Vector 2.0 robot will have an Escape Pod license associated with that serial number. I think maybe taking that a little bit further, if you have a current generation robot, you may want to purchase a separate Escape Pod license for that robot to run on the Escape Pod as well. Robbie, how many, just to maybe bring this full circle, how many robots could someone potentially run on a single Raspberry Pi?
That's a great question. So the Raspberry Pi with the recommended hardware, we've tested up to 19 vectors on one Escape Pod with a Pi 4. We actually have a support article on managing multiple vectors on Escape Pod. So if you go to support.digitaldreamlabs.com and search for managing multiple vectors on Escape Pod, or multiple vectors on Escape Pod, you'll actually come up with the link, and that link will actually provide you with detailed steps on how to engage more listeners or processing threads for voice queries on Escape Pod, as well as some recommendations and useful tips for how the queuing works on the Escape Pod for a large amount of vectors, as well as there are recommendations for the best experience using the Escape Pod with multiple vectors.
Great, thanks, Robbie. We have a couple questions, and then I think this is where we'll likely end for the day on the robot that we're going to be producing with Dragonfly. Joe asked, when will pre-orders begin for the AI flying robot? And Joe, I want to say on behalf of everyone here at Digital Dream Labs, I don't believe that there's an intention for us to continue with the kind of the pre-order model. So we'll likely not be taking pre-orders for that. As Jacob had mentioned earlier, though, our goal is to make this robot available for purchase at the end of 2022. So that is the flying AI robot that we'll be producing with Dragonfly. And Lee asked, will there be a vector version of the flying robot? And I think, the design that we're looking for is that this flying robot will be more similar to Vector than it is Cozmo, that it will have a semi-autonomous nature, and a little bit more personality perhaps than what Cozmo has, and that it won't be necessarily tethered to the app. But we'll share more details for the flying robot on another day. On behalf of myself and all of our panelists and everyone at Digital Dream Labs, I do want to thank you for spending some of your afternoon with us. As always, please feel free to reach out if you have any other questions regarding support or your pre-ordered robots. Please send our team an email at support@digitaldreamlabs.com. And with that, I wish you all the best, and thank you again for joining us. Take care.